Huainanzi Part 21:21.1 We have created and composed these writings and discourses as a means to knot the net of the way and its potency and weave the web of humankind and its affairs. 1. Above investigating them in heaven, below examining them on earth, and in the middle comprehending them through patterns. 2. Although they are not yet able to draw out fully the core of the profound mystery, they are abundantly sufficient to observe its ends and beginnings. 3. If we only summarized the essentials or provided an overview and our words did not discriminate the pure, uncarved block and differentiate the great ancestor, then it would cause people in their confusion to fail to understand them. Thus, numerous are the words we have composed and extensive are the illustrations we have provided, yet we still fear that people will depart from the root and follow the branches. Thus, if we speak of the way but do not speak of affairs, there would be no means to shift with for the times. Conversely, if we speak of affairs but do not speak of the way, there would be no means to move with 5 the processes of transformation. Therefore we composed the books 20 essays as follows. It has originating in the way, it has activating the genuine, it has celestial patterns, it has terrestrial forms, it has seasonal rules, it has surveying obscurities, it has quintessential spirit, it has the basic warp, it has the ruler's techniques, it has profound precepts. It has integrating customs, it has responses of the way, it has boundless discourses, it has sayings explained, it has an overview of the military, it has a mountain of persuasions, it has a forest of persuasions, it has among others, it has cultivating effort. And it has the exalted lineage. 621/223/21, 2821.2 Originating in the way begins with the 6 coordinates contracted 7 and compressed and the myriad things chaotic and confused. It then diagrams the features of the grand one and fathoms the depths of the dark unseen, thereby soaring beyond the frame 8 of empty nothingness. By relying on the small, it embraces the great, by guarding the contracted, it orders the expansive. It enables you to understand the bad or good fortune of taking the lead or following behind and the benefit or harm of taking action or remaining still. If you sincerely comprehend its import, flood-like, you can achieve a grand vision. If you desire a single expression to awaken to it, revere the heavenly and preserve your genuineness. If you desire a second expression to comprehend it, devalue things and honor your person. If you desire a third expression to fathom it, externalize desires and return to your genuine dispositions. If you grasp its main tenets, inwardly you will harmonize the 5 orbs and enrich the flesh and skin. If you adhere to its models and standards and partake of them to the end of your days, they will provide the means to respond and attend to the myriad aspects of the world and observe and accompany its manifold alterations, as if rolling a ball in the palm of your hand. Surely it will suffice to make you joyous. 21/224/1, 5 Activating the genuine exhaustively traces the transformation of things from their ends to their beginnings, infuses and fills the essence of something and nothing, distinguishes and differentiates the alterations of the myriad things, unifies and equates the forms of death and life. It enables you to know to disregard things and return to the self, investigate the distinctions between humaneness and rightness, comprehend the patterns of identity and difference, observe the guiding thread of utmost potency, and know the binding cords of alterations and transformations. Its explanations tally with the core of the profound mystery and comprehend 9 the mother of creation and transformation. 21/224/7, 9. Celestial patterns provides the means by which to harmonize the qi of yin and yang. Order the radiances of the sun and moon. Regulate the seasons of opening spring/summer and closing fall/winter, tabulate the movements of the stars and planets, know the permutations of their retrograde and proper motion, avoid the misfortunes associated with prohibitions and taboos, follow the responses of the seasonal cycles, and imitate the constancy of the 5 gods. It enables you to possess the means to gaze upward to heaven and uphold what to follow and thereby avoid disordering heaven's regularities. 21/224/11, 12. Terrestrial forms provides the means by which to encompass the length from north to south. Reach the breadth from east to west. Survey the topography of the mountains and hillocks, demarcate the locations of the rivers and valleys, illuminate the master of the myriad things, know the multitude of categories of living things, tabulate the enumerations of mountains and chasms, and chart the roadways far and near. It enables you to circulate comprehensively and prepare exhaustively, so that you cannot be roused by things or startled by oddities. 21/224/14, 16 Seasonal rules provides the means by which to follow heaven's seasons above, use Earth's resources below, determine standards and implement correspondences, aligning them with human norms. It is formed into 12 sections to serve as models and guides. Ending and beginning anew, they repeat limitlessly, adapting, complying, imitating, and according in predicting bad and good fortune. Taking and giving, opening and closing, each has its prohibited days, issuing commands and administering orders, instructing and warning according to the season. It enables the ruler of humankind to know the means by which to manage affairs. 21/224/18, 20 Surveying obscurities provides the means by which to discuss utmost essence penetrating the 9 heavens, utmost subtlety sinking into the formless, unblemished purity entering utmost clarity, and luminous brightness penetrating dark obscurity. It begins by grasping things and deducing their categories, observing them, taking hold of them, lifting them up, and arranging them, and pervasively positing them as categories of similarity, by which things can be understood as ideas and visualized as forms. It then penetrates various obstructions, bursts open various blockages, to guide your awareness, to connect it to the limitless. It then thereby illuminates the stimuli of the various categories of things, the responses of identical qi, the unions of yin and yang, and the intricacies of forms and shapes. It is what leads you to observe and discern in a far-reaching and expansive way. 21/224/22, 25 Quintessential spirit provides the means by which to trace to the source the root from which human life arises and understand what animates humans' form, frame, and 9 orifices. Taking its images from heaven, it coordinates and identifies humans' blood and qi with thunder and lightning, wind and rain, correlates and categorizes humans' happiness and anger with dawn and dusk, cold and heat. Judging the distinctions between life and death, distinguishing the traces of identity and difference, regulating the workings of movement and stillness, it thereby returns to the ancestor of nature and destiny. It is what enables you to cherish and nourish the essence and spirit, pacify and still the ethereal and earthly souls, not change the self on account of things, and fortify and preserve the abode of emptiness and nothingness. 21/224/27, 21/225/2 The basic warp provides the means by which to illuminate the potency of the great sages and penetrate the way of the unique inception. 10 Delineating and summarizing the devolution of decadent eras from past to present, it thereby praises the flourishing prosperity of earlier ages. 11 And criticizes the corrupt governments of later ages. It is what enables you to dispense with the acuity and keenness of hearing and sight. Still the responses and movements of the essence and spirit, restrain effusive and ephemeral viewpoints, temper the harmony of nourishing your nature, distinguish the conduct of the 5 thearchs and 3 kings, and set out the differences between small and great. 21/225/46 The ruler's techniques addresses the affairs of the ruler of humankind. It provides the means by which to adapt tasks to individuals and scrutinize responsibilities so as to ensure that each of the numerous officials exerts his abilities exhaustively. It illuminates how to wield authority and manage the handles of governance and thereby regulate the multitudes below, how to match official titles with actual performance and investigate them with the techniques of 3s and 5s. 12 It is what enables the ruler of men to grasp techniques and sustain essentials and not act recklessly based on happiness or anger. Its techniques straighten the bent and correct the crooked. Set aside self-interest and establish the public good, enabling the 100 officials to communicate in an orderly fashion and gather around the ruler like the spokes of a wheel, each exerting his utmost in his respective task, while the people succeed in their accomplishments. Such is the brilliance of the ruler's techniques. 21/225/8, 11. Profound precepts parses and analyzes various assessments of the way and its potency, ranks and puts in sequence diverse differentiations of humaneness and rightness, summarizes and juxtaposes the affairs of the human realm, generally bringing them into conformity with the potency of spirit illumination. It proposes similes and selects appositions to match them with analogies and illustrations. It divides into segments and forms sections to respond to brief aphorisms. It is what makes it possible to find fault with persuasions and attack arguments, responding to provocations without error. 21/225/13, 14. Integrating customs provides the means by which to unify the weaknesses and strengths of the various living things, equate the customs and habits of the 9 Yi tribes, comprehend past and present discourses, and thread together the patterns of the myriad things. It manages and regulates the suitability of ritual and rightness and demarcates and delineates the ends and beginnings of human affairs. 21/225/16, 17. Responses of the way picks out and draws together the relics of past affairs, pursues and surveys the traces of bygone antiquity, and investigates the reversals of bad and good fortune, benefit and harm. It tests and verifies them according to the techniques of Lao and Zhuang, 13, thus matching them to the trajectories of gain and loss. 21/225/19, 20. Boundless discourses provides the means by which to stitch up the spaces in ragged seams and hems and plug up the gaps in crooked and chattering teeth. 14. It welcomes the straightforward and straightens out the devious, in order to extend the original unhewn. 15. And thereby anticipate the alternations of success and failure and the reversals of benefit and harm. 16. It is what enables you to not be foolishly immersed in the advantages of political power, not be seductively confused by the exigencies of affairs, and so tally with constancy and change. 17. To link up and discern timely and generational alterations, and extend and adjust your policies in accordance with transformations. 21/225/22, 24. Sayings explained provides the means by which to compare through analogy the tenets of human affairs and elucidate through illustration the substance of order and disorder. It ranks the hidden meanings of subtle sayings, explaining them with literary expressions that reflect ultimate principles. Thus it patches up and mends deficiencies due to errors and oversights. 21/225/26, 27. An overview of the military provides the means by which to illuminate the techniques of battle, victory, assault, and capture, the force of formations and movements, and the variations of deception and subterfuge, embodying the way of adaptation and compliance and upholding the theory of holding back. It is what enables you to know that when you form for battle or deploy to fight contrary to the way, it will not work. Know that when you assault and capture or fortify and defend contrary to moral potency, it will not be formidable. If you truly realize its implications, whether advancing or retreating, moving right or left, there will be no place to be attacked or endangered. It takes relying on force as its substance and clarity and stillness as its constant. It avoids fullness and follows emptiness, as if driving forward a flock of sheep. Such are the means to discuss military affairs. 21/225/29, 31. A mountain of persuasions and a forest of persuasions demonstrate how to skillfully and elegantly penetrate and bore open the blockages and obstructions of the many affairs and thoroughly and comprehensively penetrate and pierce the barriers and hindrances of the myriad things. Proposing analogies and selecting similes, distinguishing categories and differentiating forms, it thereby leads and orders your awareness, loosens and unties what is knotted up, and unravels and unwinds what is wound up, so as to illuminate the boundaries of affairs. 21/226/1, 3. Among others provides the means by which to observe the alterations of bad and good fortune, discern the reversals of benefit and harm, diagnose 18 the symptoms of success and failure, and mark out and hold up to view the boundaries of ends and beginnings. 19 It differentiates and distinguishes the subtleties of the 100 affairs and discloses and reveals the mechanisms of preservation and loss, enabling you to know bad fortune as good fortune, loss as gain, success as failure, and benefit as harm. If you truly grasp its utmost implications, you will possess the means to move to and fro and up and down among the vulgar of the age, while remaining unharmed by slander, abuse, venom, or poison. 21/226/5, 7. Cultivating effort provides the means by which those whose entry into the way is not profound and whose appreciation of argumentation is not deep can, by observing these literary expressions, turn themselves around to take clarity and purity as constants and mildness and serenity as roots. But those who idly and lazily set aside their studies, give free rein to their desires and indulge their feelings, and wish to misappropriate what they lack, will be obstructed from the great way. Now, madmen have no anxiety, and sages, too, have no anxiety. Sages have no anxiety because they harmonize by means of potency, whereas madmen have no anxiety because they do not know the difference between bad and good fortune. Thus, the non-action of those who fully comprehend the way and the non-action of those who are obstructed from the way are alike with regard to their non-action but differ with regard to the means by which they are non-active. Thus, on their behalf, what can be heeded has been brought to the surface, declared, circulated, and explained, thereby inspiring scholars to diligently appropriate these principles for themselves. 21/226/9, 13 The exalted lineage traverses the 8 endpoints, extends to the highest heights, illuminates the 3 luminaries above, and harmonizes water and earth below. It aligns the way of past and present, orders the hierarchy of human relationships and patterns, summarizes the tenets of the myriad regions, and returns them home to a single root, thereby knotting the net of the way of governance and weaving the web of the affairs of the true king. 20 It then traces to the source the techniques of the mind, sets in order instinct and nature, and thereby provides a lodging place for the noumen of clarity and equanimity. It clarifies and purifies the quintessence of spirit illumination, thereby enfolding and cleaving to the harmony of heaven. It provides the means to observe how the 5 thearchs and the 3 kings embraced the heavenly chi, cherished the heavenly heart, and grasped centrality and savored harmony. Their moral potency having taken shape within them, it then cohered heaven and earth, issued forth and aroused yin and yang, ordered the 4 seasons, rectified the changeable directions, calmed things with its tranquility, and extended them with its efficaciousness. Their moral potency then thereby fired and smelted the myriad things, 21 buoyed up and transformed the innumerable life forms, singing forth, they harmonized, moving about, they followed along, so that all things within the 4 seas with a single mind unanimously offered their allegiance. Thus, lucky stars appeared, auspicious winds arrived, the yellow dragon descended, phoenix nests lined the trees, and the kylin tarried in the open fields. Had moral potency not taken shape within them, yet their laws and tributes were implemented, and their regulations and measures were employed exclusively, then the spirits and divinities would not have responded to them, good fortune and blessings would not have returned home to them, all things within the 4 seas would not have submitted to them, and subjects would not have been transformed by them. Thus, moral potency that takes shape within is the great foundation of governance. This is the message of the exalted lineage of the profoundly illustrious. 2221/226/15, 2121.3 In all, these interconnected writings are the means to focus on the way and remove obstructions, enabling succeeding generations to know what is appropriate to uphold or abandon and what is suitable to endorse or reject. Externally, when they interact with things, they will not be bewildered. Internally, they will possess the means to lodge their spirit and nourish their chi. They will take ease in and merge with utmost harmony, delighting themselves in what they have received from heaven and earth. Therefore, had we discussed the way originating in the way 23 and not illuminated ends and beginnings activating the genuine, you would not know the models to follow. Had we discussed ends and beginnings and not illuminated heaven, earth, and the four seasons celestial patterns, terrestrial forms, and seasonal rules, respectively, you would not know the taboos to avoid. Had we discussed heaven, earth, and the four seasons and not introduced examples and elucidated categories, you would not recognize the subtleties of the quintessential chi surveying obscurities. Had we discussed the utmost essence and not traced to its source the spirit-like chi of human beings, you would not know the mechanism by which to nourish your vitality quintessential spirit. Had we traced to their source the genuine dispositions of human beings and not discussed the potency of the great sages, you would not know the human shortcomings associated with the five phases the basic warp. Had we discussed the way of the five thearchs and not discussed the affairs of the ruler, you would not know the proper order distinguishing the small from the great the ruler's techniques. Had we discussed the affairs of the ruler and not provided precepts and illustrations, you would not know the times for taking action or remaining still profound precepts. Had we discussed precepts and illustrations and not discussed alterations in customs, you would not know how to coordinate and equate their main tenets. Integrating customs. Had we discussed alterations in customs and not discussed past events, you would not know the responses of the way and its potency responses of the way. To know the way and its potency but not know the perversions of the age, you would lack the means to accommodate yourself to the myriad aspects of the world boundless discourses. To know boundless discourses but not know sayings explained, you would lack the means to take your ease. To comprehend writings and compositions but not know the tenets of military affairs, you would lack the means to respond to enemy troops an overview of the military. To know grand overviews but not know analogies and illustrations, you would lack the means to clarify affairs by elaboration a mountain of persuasions and a forest of persuasions. To know the public way but not know interpersonal relations, you would lack the means to respond to ill and good fortune among others. To know interpersonal relations but not know cultivating effort, you would lack the means to inspire scholars to exert their utmost strength. Should you desire to forcibly abridge this composition by observing and summarizing only its essentials without traveling its winding paths and entering its subtle domains, this will not suffice to exhaust the meanings of the way and its potency. Therefore, we composed these writings in 20 chapters. Thereby the patterns of heaven and earth are thoroughly examined, the affairs of the human realm are comprehensively engaged, and the way of the five thearchs and three kings is fully described. Their discussions are sometimes detailed and sometimes general, sometimes subtle and sometimes obvious. The tenets advanced in each chapter are different, and each has a reason for being expressed. Now, if we spoke exclusively of the way, there would be nothing that is not contained in it. Nevertheless, only sages are capable of grasping its root and thereby knowing its branches. At this time, scholars lack the capabilities of sages, and if we do not provide them with detailed explanations, then to the end of their days they will flounder in the midst of darkness and obscurity without knowing the great awakening brought about by these writings' luminous and brilliant techniques. 21/226/2321/227/4 Now, the Qian and Kun trigrams of the changes suffice to comprehend the way and disclose its meanings. With the 8 trigrams you can understand the inauspicious and auspicious and know bad and good fortune. Nevertheless, Fu Shi made them into the 64 permutations 24 i.e. hexagrams, and the House of Zhou added 6 line texts to each of the hexagrams, and these are the means to trace to the source and fathom the way of purity and clarity and grasp and follow the ancestor of the myriad things. The number of the 5 notes does not exceed gong, shang, ju, ji, and yu. Nevertheless, you cannot play them all on the unstopped 5 strings of a qin. You must control and harmonize the fine and thick strings, and only then can you produce a melody. Now, if you draw only the head of a dragon, those observing it will not be able to identify what animal it is. But if you add the body, there will be no confusion as to the animal's identity. Now, if our references to the way were numerous, but if our references to things were few, if our references to techniques were extensive, but if our references to affairs were superficial, and we extended this throughout our discussions, we would be left speechless. Anyone who intended to study this and who firmly wished to build on it, would also find himself with nothing to say. 21/227/6, 11 Now, discussions about the way are surpassingly profound, therefore, we have written many compositions on it, i.e., the way to reveal its true qualities. The myriad things are surpassingly numerous, therefore we have broadly offered explanations of them to communicate their significance. Though these compositions may be winding and endless, complicated and slow-going, intertwined and numerous and distant and dawdling, in order to distill and purify their utmost meaning and ensure that they are neither opaque nor impenetrable, we have retained them and not discarded them. Now, although the debris and putrid carcasses floating in the Yangtze and Yellow rivers cannot be surpassed in number, nevertheless those who offer sacrifices draw water from them. This is because the rivers are so large. Although a cup of wine may be sweet, if a fly is immersed in it, even commoners will not drink it. This is because the cup is so small. If you sincerely comprehend the discussions in these 20 chapters, you will thereby observe their general patterns and grasp their essentials, penetrate the 9 fields, pass through the 10 gates, externalize heaven and earth, and extend beyond the mountains and rivers. Wandering and ambling through the span of a single age, governing and fashioning the forms of the myriad things, surely this is an excellent journey. This being the case, you will clasp the sun and the moon without being burned, and you will anoint the myriad things without drying up. How ample! How lucid! It is enough to read this alone. How far-reaching and vast! How boundless! Here you may wander. 21/227/13, 1821.4 In the age of King Wen, the Shang tyrant Zhao became the son of heaven. Taxes and levies had no measures, and executions and killings had no end. Zhao indulged himself in sensual pleasures and drowned himself in intoxicating liquors. Inside his palace compound, he constructed a public market and created the punishment of the roasting beam. He dismembered one who remonstrated with him 25 and cut out the fetus from a pregnant woman. The world shared the same mind in condemning him. King Wen, however, with the accumulated goodness of 4 generations, cultivated moral potency and practiced rightness as he dwelled in the region of Qizhu. Though his territory was no more than 100 li square, 2/3 26 of the world gave allegiance to him. King Wen hoped that by means of humility and softness, he would restrain the powerful and violent and thereby rid the world of brutality and cleanse it of tyranny and plundering to establish the kingly way. Thus, the strategies of the Grand Duke 27 were born. 21/227/20, 23 When King Wen's work was left unfinished, King Wu continued his efforts. Employing the strategies of the Grand Duke, he mobilized a small contingent of troops 28 and personally donned battle armor and helmet to chastise the impious and punish the unjust. He vanquished the enemy troops at Mui 29 and thereby ascended to the position of Son of Heaven. At that time, the world was not yet settled, and the lands within the seas were not yet calmed. Yet King Wu hoped that by illuminating the exceptional moral potency of King Wen, he might inspire the Yi and Di tribes 30 each to come and pay tribute with their respective riches. Since those from the most distant lands had not yet arrived, King Wu decreed 3 years of mourning and entombed King Wen in a state chamber where his remains awaited those from these distant regions. King Wu was on the throne for 3 years and then expired. His son King Cheng was still in his infancy when his father died, and he was not yet able to attend to the affairs of governance. Cai Shu and Guan Shu 31 backed Prince Lufuer of the tyrant Zhao, and they wanted to foment a rebellion. The Duke of Zhou, 32 however, continued the efforts of King Wen. He preserved the governance of the Son of Heaven by aiding and supporting the Zhou household and assisting King Cheng. Fearing that if the path of war were not quelled, then ministers and subjects might imperil the sovereign, he consequently retired his war horses to Mount Hua. pastured his war oxen in Peach Grove, destroyed his war drums and snapped his war drumsticks. 33 And taking up the tablet of a minister, he held forth in audience, thereby placating and settling the royal household and calming and comforting the lords of the land. When King Cheng came of age and could attend to the affairs of governance, the Duke of Zhou was enfeoffed in the state of Lu, where he modified the prevailing habits and changed the local customs. Confucius cultivated the way of Kings Cheng and Kang, and transmitted the teachings of the Duke of Zhou, thereby instructing his 70 disciples and inspiring them to don the robes and caps of officialdom and administer the documents and records. Thus, the learning of the Confucians was born. 21/227/25, 21/228/2 Master Mo studied the work of the Confucians 34 and received the techniques of Confucius. However, he regarded their rituals to be worrisome and inappropriate, their lavish funerals to be wasteful of resources, impoverishing the people, while their lengthy mourning periods harmed life and impeded undertakings. Thus, Master Mo rejected the way of the Zhou dynasty and used the regulations of the Xia dynasty. 35 In the age of Yu. 36 When the world was engulfed by a great flood, Yu personally took up basket and spade, and putting the interests of the people first, he dredged the Yellow River and channeled its 9 tributaries, bored out the Yangtze River and opened up its 9 channels, scooped out the 5 lakes and settled the boundaries of the Eastern Sea. At that time, since the burning heat was unrelenting, and since the inundating dampness was unabsorbed, those who died in the highlands were buried in the highlands, whereas those who died in the marshes were buried in the marshes. 37 Thus, economizing expenditures, frugal burials, and brief mourning periods were born. 21/228/4, 7 In the age of Duke Huan of Qi, 38 The Son of Heaven was debased and weak, the lords of the land were violent and aggressive. The southern Yi and northern Di tribes in succession invaded the central states, and the continuity of the central states hung by a thread. The territory of the Qi kingdom was sustained by the sea to the east and barricaded by the Yellow River to the north. Though its territory was narrow and its cultivated fields were sparse, the people were very intelligent and resourceful. Duke Huan was vexed by the calamities of the central states and embittered by the rebellions of the Yi and Di tribes. He hoped that by preserving those whose kingdoms had perished and by continuing those whose bloodlines had been cut off, the prestige of the Son of Heaven would be restored, and the efforts of Kings Wen and Wu would be expanded. Thus the writings of Master Guan 39 were born. 21/228/9, 11 Duke Jing of Qi 40 enjoyed music and sex while inside his palace and enjoyed dogs and horses while outside his palace. When hunting and shooting, he would forget to return home. When enjoying sex, he did so indiscriminately. He built a terrace with a magnificent bedroom and cast a grand bell. When it was struck in the audience hall, the sound was so thunderous that all the pheasants outside the city walls cried out. In a single morning session of court he distributed 3,000 bushels of grain as largesse. Liang Kaiju and Zijiaku I 41 led him about from the left and the right. 42 Thus, the admonitions of Master Yan were born. 43/21/228/13, 14 In the twilight of the Zhou era, with the lords of the 6 states the gorges were differentiated and the valleys were set apart, the rivers were divided up and the mountains parceled out. Each governed his own realm and defended his allotted territory by seizing the handles of power and by enforcing his governmental ordinances. Below there were no regional governors, while above there was no Son of Heaven. They launched violent military campaigns in their struggles for power, and the victor became the most honored. They relied on alliances with states, bound themselves through important exchanges, divided pledge tallies, and established relations with distant regions, thereby preserving their principalities and maintaining their ancestral altars. Thus, the vertical and horizontal 44 alliances and the long, and short-term coalitions were born. 21/228/16, 18 Master Shen 45 was the assistant of Marquis Zhaoxi of Han 46 when the state of Han broke off from the state of Jin. The land of these states was barren and their subjects were hostile, being wedged between powerful states. The ancient rituals of the Jin state had not yet been destroyed, while the new laws of the Han state were repeatedly promulgated. Ordinances of the previous rulers had not yet been rescinded, while the ordinances of the later rulers were also being handed down. Since new and old contradicted each other and before and after undermined each other, the various officials of the state of Han were at cross purposes and in confusion, they did not know what practices to employ. Thus, the writings on performance and Title 47 were born. 21/228/20, 22 The customs of the kingdom of Qin were covetous and wolfish, forceful and violent. They diminished rightness and pursued profit. Though they could awe others through punishments, they could not transform them through goodness. Though they could encourage others through rewards, they could not restrain them by appeals to their reputations. Shielded by precipices and encircled by the Yellow River, the Qin's four borders were thereby fortified. The land was fertile and the topography advantageous so that the Qin stockpiled reserves and burgeoned wealth. Duke Xiao of Qin 48 wanted to swallow up the lords of the land with the ferocity of a tiger or wolf. Thus, the laws of Shangyang 49 were born. 21/228/24, 26. In this book of the Liu clan, i.e. the Huainanzi, we have observed the phenomena of heaven and earth, penetrated past and present discussions, weighed affairs and established regulations, measured forms and applied what is suitable, traced to its source the heart of the way and its potency, and united the customs of the three kings, 50 collecting them and alloying them. At the core of the profound mystery, the infinitesimal movements of the essence have been revealed. By casting aside limits and boundaries and by drawing on the pure and the tranquil, we have thereby unified the world, brought order to the myriad things, responded to alterations and transformations, and comprehended their distinctions and categories. We have not followed a path made by a solitary footprint or adhered to instructions from a single perspective or allowed ourselves to be entrapped or fettered by things so that we would not advance or shift according to the age. Thus, situate this book in the narrowest of circumstances and nothing will obstruct it, extend it to the whole world and it will leave no empty spaces. 21/228/28, 31.